You keep making promises to yourself that sound real in the moment, that next Monday you'll wake up early and finally get disciplined, that this month you'll stop messing around and lose the weight, that this year you'll finally start the thing you have been thinking about for way too long. And then the moment comes. You look at the shoes by the door, you look at the laptop, you look at the idea, and instead of starting, you do something else. You make coffee, you check your phone, you answer one useless email. You tell yourself you'll do it when you feel more clear, more ready, more like yourself. And the worst part is not that you do not want it. It is that you want it so much and still do not move. That does not automatically mean you are lazy. Because some people are not stuck because they dream too little. They are stuck because their brain has quietly learned to treat the beginning like something dangerous. So every time a real step becomes possible, you do not freeze because you are weak. You pull away because something in you is trying to protect you from the feeling that step might bring. And if you keep dreaming big, planning big, meaning it every single time, but somehow staying exactly where you are, there is probably a deeper reason for that. And once you see it, your whole pattern starts to make sense. And that deeper reason usually starts much earlier than you think. It starts the second something stops, being just another task, and starts meaning something to you. Because when a thing really matters, your brain does not always experience it as something simple. Going for that run is no longer just going for a run. Now it is about whether you can finally become the kind of person who stays consistent. Opening the laptop is no longer just opening the laptop. Now it is the moment where your idea might turn out to be bad, or average, or not as special as it felt in your head. Sending the application is no longer just sending the application. Now it is a chance to be ignored, or rejected, or seen, and not chosen. And that changes everything. Because one of the most useful ideas from procrastination research, especially in Tim Peichel's work, is that procrastination is often not really a time management problem. It is an emotion regulation problem. You are not losing to your calendar first. You are losing to the feeling that shows up right before you begin. The tightness in your chest, the pressure, the self-doubt, that quiet fear that this next step might hurt more than you want it to. And once your brain links a task to a feeling like that, it stops asking what is good for your future. It starts asking what will make this feeling go away right now. So when your brain links a task to a feeling like that, something very predictable starts to happen. You do not just avoid the task, you start looking for relief. So instead of taking the first real step, you drift towards something safer. You straighten up your desk, you check your email, you reorganize your Notion pages, you watch another video about productivity. You read one more article about how to finally get started. And because all of that still looks useful, it is very easy to miss what is actually happening. You are not moving toward the thing, you are moving away from the feeling. And for a moment, it works. The pressure drops, the dread softens, you feel a little lighter, a little safer, a little less exposed, and that is the trap. Because that relief is not just a feeling, it is a reward. Your brain notices that the second you step away from the hard thing, you feel better. So it starts learning a very dangerous lesson. Avoidance brings relief. And behaviors that bring relief tend to get repeated. That is the avoidance loop. A meaningful task creates discomfort. Discomfort pushes you towards something safer. That safer thing gives you relief. And relief rewards the avoidance. So the loop gets stronger. You feel better now. But the thing that actually matters to your life is still sitting there, untouched. And once you see that, your procrastination stops looking random. It starts looking like a pattern. And there is a real reason that pattern can feel stronger than logic. Because when you are facing something hard, there are at least two systems in your brain pushing in different directions. One of them reacts fast to anything that feels threatening or emotionally loaded. That is where the amygdala comes in. You can think of it as part of your alarm system. Its job is not to help you build your dream life. Its job is to notice danger. And sometimes danger is not physical danger. Sometimes it is the possibility of failure, or embarrassment, or rejection, or finding out that you are not as good as you hoped. The other system helps you stay with discomfort long enough to keep going. Part of that includes the anterior cingulate cortex, which helps with conflict, control, and staying engaged when something feels difficult. So one part of your brain is trying to protect you from pain. Another part is trying to help you act anyway. And when a task gets tied to shame, self-doubt, or self-worth, the alarm system often speaks first. That is why you do not experience the moment as, here is where I begin. You experience it as, here is where I could fail. Here is where I could be judged. Here is where this could hurt. And once your brain processes the task as a threat, avoidance starts to feel like the reasonable move. Not the helpful move, not the wise move, but the move that makes immediate emotional sense. And if you keep repeating that response, what happens next is where the real damage begins. Because every time you go through that avoidance loop, you reinforce it. The pathway gets more familiar, more efficient, more automatic. So procrastination slowly stops being just an annoying habit. It starts becoming your default response to anything that feels meaningful, uncertain, or emotionally risky. And the cost is not only lost time, the deeper cost is self-trust. You start promising yourself things and believing yourself a little less each time. You say you will start on Monday. Then Monday passes. You say this weekend will be different. Then it is not. You make a plan at night that already feels fragile by morning. And after enough of that, the problem is no longer just the workout or the application or the idea you keep postponing. The problem is that some part of you no longer fully trusts your own word. That is what repeated avoidance wears down. Not just progress, self-trust. So if your brain can learn avoidance through repetition, can it learn a different pattern? Yes. But not by forcing yourself to become a new person overnight. Not by waiting for motivation to magically appear. Not by waiting until you finally feel confident enough, ready enough, or healed enough. The shift is much simpler than that. You interrupt the avoidance loop by starting. Not by finishing the whole thing, not by doing it brilliantly, just by starting. Because the goal is not to prove that you are fearless now. The goal is to make the beginning small enough that your nervous system does not immediately go into defense mode. You do not need to feel ready to begin. You need to begin at a level your brain does not experience as a major threat. That is why just start is not shallow advice here. It is not about pretending motivation does not matter. It is not about yelling at yourself. It is not about disciplined theater. It is a real intervention. You are giving your brain a smaller version of the task, a version it can stay with, a version that does not trigger such a strong urge to escape. Open the file, write 3 bad sentences, put on the shoes, walk for 5 minutes, press record for 30 seconds, send the first message. A small start matters because it teaches your brain a new lesson. That beginning is survivable. That discomfort is not the same as danger. That action does not always end in pain, and that relief does not have to come from avoidance. It can come from finally moving. So how do you actually break this pattern when it starts happening? The first step is to catch it and name it. Not judge it, not call yourself lazy, not turn it into a character flaw. Just stop for a second and ask a better question. What am I feeling right now? Because most of the time, it is not, I do not want to do this. It is anxiety, or shame, or overwhelm, or the fear that once you start, you will find out your work is not as good as you hoped. And once a feeling has a name, it usually gets a little less powerful, a little less slippery, a little less able to run the whole show without you noticing. The second step is to make the task almost stupidly small, not small enough to feel impressive, small enough to feel safe. If you have been avoiding your money, do not try to rebuild your whole financial life tonight. Open the budgeting app and look at the number for 2 minutes. If you have been putting off your project, do not promise yourself a perfect first draft. Write 3 lines you would never show anyone. If you keep avoiding exercise, do not announce a new era. Put your shoes on and walk to the end of the block. If you have been saying you want to start creating, do not plan the whole channel. Record 30 seconds. If there is an email you keep avoiding, do not clear your whole inbox first. Write the subject line. Because the first goal is not big progress. The first goal is to break the brain's false prediction about the beginning. Small is not weak. Small is how you get around the defense response. And there is a reason that matters. Research on procrastination found that people consistently put off the tasks they experienced as difficult, stressful, or unpleasant. And when they did, they usually told themselves stories that made the delay feel reasonable. I will do it better tomorrow. I work better under pressure. This is not the right time. I just need to feel more ready first. But when the deadline finally forced them to begin, almost nobody felt glad they had waited. Most people wished they had started earlier, and many realized the task itself was not nearly as awful as the anticipation of it. That is the part your brain keeps getting wrong. It is often much better at predicting dread than it is at predicting reality. The beginning feels heavier in your mind than it often feels in your hands. But there is another misunderstanding that is even easier to miss. A lot of people think procrastination only counts if you are lying on the couch doing nothing. But that is not always what it looks like. Sometimes it looks like updating your resume for the 5th time instead of applying, or spending an hour choosing the perfect microphone instead of recording the first video. Or reorganizing your entire workspace instead of opening the file. Or watching 3 videos about starting a side business instead of testing the idea once. Or meal prepping, buying supplements, and planning the perfect routine instead of taking tonight's walk. So you end the day tired, you did things. Some of them were even useful. But the one thing that actually mattered most is still untouched. That is why this pattern hides so well. If you did nothing at all, the guilt would be obvious, so your brain often picks a safer substitute, something lower risk, something that still lets you feel competent, organized, or responsible without exposing you to the real emotional threat. And that is the twist. You can be busy all day and still be avoiding the one thing that would actually move your life forward. And this is where 2 very familiar disguises usually begin to appear. The first disguise is perfectionism. And perfectionism is not always what people think it is. It is not just wanting to do something well. It is not just having high standards. A lot of the time, it is the fear of being seen before you feel ready. So you wait until it looks better, until it sounds better, until the idea feels clearer, until you feel more confident, until you can do it in a way that protects you from being judged in your unfinished state. You keep editing the file instead of sending it. You keep rewriting the post instead of publishing it. You record it, watch it back, delete it, and tell yourself it just needs one more pass. But that is the hidden cost of perfectionism. It does not only want you to do things right, it wants to protect you from the feeling of not being enough while you are still becoming. And that is why it can freeze your whole life. Because if you never begin until you feel fully ready, fully polished, fully certain, then the beginning never really comes. And if perfectionism protects you by keeping you still, the next disguise is even trickier. Because it makes stillness feel like movement. That second disguise is productive procrastination. This is when you do a lot of things that look right, sound right, even feel responsible, but the real task still does not move. You fix your channel bio instead of filming the first video. You spend an hour comparing cameras instead of pressing record. You read another book about startups instead of trying to sell to one real person. You build the perfect meal plan instead of taking tonight's walk. You redesign the system, rename the folder, optimize the workflow, clean the space, and tell yourself you are getting ready. And maybe part of that is useful. That is what makes this pattern so convincing. You are not lying on the couch doing nothing. You are active. You are engaged. You are doing things that have some value. But the most important thing is still exactly where it was. That is productive procrastination. Movement can reduce guilt, but only real progress moves your life. And here is the hardest truth in the whole video. You are usually not avoiding the task itself. You are avoiding the feeling the task brings up in you. The uncertainty, the exposure, the chance of falling short, the version of yourself you might have to meet if it does not go well. Once you see that, a lot of your busy starts to look very different. So if this has been your pattern, it does not mean you lack ambition, and it does not automatically mean you lack discipline. It may just mean you have been repeating the wrong loop for a long time. And loops can be learned, which means they can also be unlearned. A small step today is worth more than a perfect vision you never begin. So if you want, leave one word in the comments, perfectionism or productive procrastination, just enough to name the thing that tends to hold you back. And if videos like this help you understand yourself a little more clearly, you can stay with Peaceite Shelter. And if you are realizing that your real problem is not laziness, but the overthinking that shows up right before action, the next video you should watch is about why you think so much before you begin.